My name is Daniel Foch. I'm host of the Canadian Real Estate Investor Podcast. I also am a director of economic research at a company called Rare Real Estate in the city of Toronto. I see a lot of you here, actually. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. And I most recently was invited to jump into this kind of organization that lends money on the debt and equity side to people, especially in the missing middle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and kind of what is missing. The peppy title of my presentation is Middle Money, and that the capital markets and financial services markets, especially in the city of Toronto, have a missing middle as well. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like. And I'm not going to step on the toes of the two other guys who are going to be talking about money later today. I think, are you one of them, my foremost? Because there's some groups that are doing kind of top end stuff that's really good. We're going to talk about the bottom end. Because from my perspective, when you look at the yellow belt, and we just heard about it in pro formas, tearing down a house and building a fourplex in a lot of cases doesn't pencil. And so in some cases it does, but to me the immediacy of supply is what's going to solve the housing crisis, and the way that we can do that is through the addition of one single unit, an accessory dwelling unit, or ADU. And I think that that's a market that's relatively underserved on the capital side. The theme that we've heard today is that part of the reason that it doesn't exist is because it was legislated out of existence for a period of time, but the other part is that a lot of it is just too big for individual investors, like a lot of us in this room, and too small for institutional or even large, sub-institutional, but large-scale investors. As a host of the biggest real estate investing podcast in Canada, we interact with a lot of small-cap real estate investors on a regular basis. And a lot of them really want to solve the housing crisis through smaller transactions, and it's just becoming available, I think, in the legislative environment. And so the capital environment and the financial services environment still has some catching up to do, and I want to talk about what those opportunities look like. Before I do that, I would like to just get a scan of the room because I want to know who I'm talking to. You guys know who I am. So do I have any realtors in the room? The picture up there is a guy in an ice bath, actually. So, okay, cool. Thank you, realtors. Next, consultants. There's a picture of a bee, and it says buzzwords for my consultants there. You guys are the cool consultants that aren't doing buzzwords, though. Finance bros. We got any vests in here? You're all actually wearing suits. I guess vest season is over. And then construction people. I use the Hermes construction hat because construction people are the real rich people in these. They just haven't told anybody how much money's in that industry. And then anybody from an industry that I didn't mention, if you didn't put your hand up, it's your time to just put your hand up. What industry are you in? Okay, cool. Landlords, awesome. I love that. Anyone else want to volunteer what they do? That's property management, cool. Cool. Technology, love it. Okay, you're important. Does anybody know what this graph is? It goes from 70 down to 66.5% over the last 10 years. Okay, good. Great guess. This is a Canadian home ownership rate. From a policy perspective, who do we think that Canada wants to be more like? So you have Laos versus Switzerland. What is our government aiming to be more like? What would your guess be? Switzerland? Good answer. That's what I need you to say. Kazakhstan or Germany? Germany, okay. And then Romania or the UK? Okay, good. Great. You guys did a great job on this quiz. On the left-hand side, you have countries that have home ownership rates in the 90% range. On the right-hand side, we have countries that have home ownership rates below 50%, except for the UK. But I think that this is where we're heading. I think we're going to a low ownership housing model in Canada. I spent a lot of time in Europe. I'm a Swiss citizen. I did my military conscription there, and I actually think it's a good thing. I think that it allows us to be more productive with our capital. I think as you get further and further in your kind of generational cycle, people are less inclined and good at being homeowners. I think it encourages multi-generational living, and it's a better allocation of capital. But what this requires is it requires a lot of people to be, where's my landlord there? Landlords. We need a lot of landlords to rent properties to these people. We need a lot of units. And right now we don't have enough of those, and we know that, and we can't build them fast enough. The real estate brokerage space has a missing middle too. So we have on the low end, we have groups like Rare that I'm from. You have your Remaxes of the world, Royal LePage, et cetera. And you can see them kind of trying to creep up into that more commercial space with their commercial programs. And then on the top end, you have your big brokerages, your office brokers, the guys who wear suits and are all vice presidents. Sorry, no, I didn't mean that offensively, but yeah, I mean, everybody is a vice president at those companies. Anyway, so I see, you can't really see the arrows on this, but on that one, you can see the arrows. I see real estate brokerage actually creeping into the missing middle from the bottom, not the top. My question is, what do realtors need to play a more active role in the missing middle? I don't know if anybody wants to field that question. Maybe. Great answer. Anybody else? Okay, so he said a new type of product offer, and I would agree with that. And I think that the real estate profession in Canada, or in Toronto especially, we have like 70,000 agents, highest realtors per capita in the world, biggest real estate board in the world. We have a lot of agents. We have a bit of an education problem. So I think maybe helping agents be more educated on what the missing middle looks like and how to advise clients to create that product would really do something meaningful for this industry. Mortgage space, very similar. You have a lot of groups at the top and a lot of groups at the bottom, not a lot in the middle. And I think on this side, you're starting to see more and more of these financial groups creep in from the top rather than the bottom. And a lot of it's an agility thing. Like, they don't have to go show properties. They kind of just have to underwrite different things. But what do they need? What do lenders and brokers need? And more rhetorical questions, but thinking about, I'll answer the question on kind of what we think and what we're proposing just from feedback we've heard from listeners on the podcast, other individuals that want to work with us in the space. And I guess the final piece is owners and developers. So on the bottom end, you have mom and pop, you have small corporations. On the top end, you have institutions. And I haven't seen any way in which institutions can interact with the yellow belt at scale yet. So I want to get a good understanding of how those mom and pop investors can start pushing upward. And I guess the next question is, what do those investors need? I don't know if anybody wants to answer that one. Go ahead. You're great, by the way. I appreciate you.
Better value for their capital.
Sure, yeah. Okay, better value for their capital.
I would say just like knowledge.
Knowledge and expertise, okay.
Consultants who can work at scale and replicate scale.
Okay, yeah. So consultants who can work at scale and replicate scale for them. Great answer. Better rules at the Residential Tenancies Act was the answer there. Easy access to capital. Great answer as well. Okay, simplified strata and condo registration. Okay, management support so they can get their weekends back. Cheaper land and better access to data.
Policy environment that encourages them to ask for larger developments, not smaller ones.
Okay, a policy environment that encourages them to ask for larger projects rather than smaller ones.
Maybe connection to each other to share lessons.
Great idea. Connection to each other to share lessons. Okay, technology that's driven by management. Last one. It's a good question. That's a great one. A housing market that is not going to burst. I would appreciate that as well. I mean, what a volatile asset class. If you look at like the price chart for Toronto real estate, everybody's always saying it only goes up, but I personally saw a big drop in 2017 and 2022. I don't know about you guys, but so this is a land bank is a group of professionals in the real estate space, investment sales. So I'm a real estate broker. We have a mortgage broker on our team. I guess we sort of function as consultants or advisors in our current capacity, but we've been approached a lot by individuals in the lending space who have an interest in funding deals in the missing middle space. Family offices that we work a lot with on the equity side have expressed an interest. I think a lot of it is missing middle has kind of found its way into that like sexy like ESG space lately. I think with the housing as being a solution to the housing crisis. So I think it's really fascinating in that respect, and I think that presents a lot of opportunity. And private lenders are really interested as well. And so from my perspective, the way the capital market looks and why it has a missing middle is, I mean, you have not a lot of transactions at the top end, but they're huge transactions. And you have individuals in this room and who are going to be speaking after me that can talk a lot about what that looks like. And then in the low rise, you have a lot of lenders and smaller transactions. In the middle, again, this didn't really exist, but you have a huge, well, I mean, overnight, a couple of weeks ago, the transaction volume potential increased substantially. And there's more units now in that space than there is in the low rise space. But what happened as a result of this is there's this missing middle in the money space. So you've got a lot of funding for low rise, a lot of funding for mid rise plus. That 5 to 10 unit infill is okay because you see the line there on the right hand side is MLI Select, which I think we're going to hear. I think Max is going to be talking about later. That's CMHC's program, exceptional stuff, but it doesn't help us with what just happened with the yellow belt because it's sub 5 units, and so there is a gap in your duplex, triplex, and fourplex product, and we're really hoping to fill that. And I honestly do think that private lenders are going to play a big role in that because it's fast capital. I'm thinking like stuff where it's existing framed house, you're adding one single unit to it. To me, that's immediate supply. Like tearing down a house, getting permits, building a fourplex isn't immediate supply. It's not super agile. It's not super responsive to a housing crisis. So I think adding an ADU is an underserved market on the credit side. This is what we're hearing, by the way, from like I talk to thousands of real estate investors on a monthly basis from the podcast. We're always interacting with our audience, and we want to know what their pain points are, and this is what they're telling us. Multiplex acquisition stuff, I mean, a lot of the CMHC long-term programs, there's a point at which it's too small for the big guys, and finding places like, not everywhere in Canada is like Toronto. And so, for people who want to buy multiplexes in Saskatoon, which a lot of our listeners do because they're seeking, 5+ or 6+% cap rates and they don't want to be cash negative. The credit environment isn't really super well suited for individuals like that. So the question that we had was, what if you could borrow $50,000 to turn over an existing suite, as an example, up to $50,000, or if you could borrow up to $250,000 to build an ADU? Would that have an impactful? Would that have an impact on bringing supply to market immediately? Like, we know that there's an excess bedrooms. Canada has an excess bedrooms of like 3 extra bedrooms. Is that the right stat? Something like that. Boomers have too much houses, basically. Or too much square footage. And so the question is, and I'm just going to try and rush through kind of the end of this because I've been more long in the tooth than I planned to be, but we've done deals like this on a private basis with contractors who are in the room, who are helping to underwrite these things. Could you pre-underwrite the deal where we know that the person will be able to afford the takeout loan, maybe be with their existing bank? You give them a loan. It doesn't even need to be registered on title, I don't think, if it's a like a fast credit product, but it probably should be from a safety perspective. And this is just really a thought experiment, by the way, because I want to have a discussion about it after when we're doing the panel. Will it debt service? Will the rent pay the loan? Is it worthwhile for the owner to do it? What's their existing loan to value? What's their future loan to value? And can you get a commitment from their existing lender to take that out? Lenders like it because they're not actually giving like 100 or 250 grand up front. They're giving like 10 grand a week kind of thing. The idea would be that you would take somebody who has, I'm really thinking or I'm talking as if this is baby boomers, but it doesn't always have to be. But I do think we're kind of going to go through a period where a lot of them realize over the next 10 years that they have more house than they need. And if that's not a super liquid market to sell because nobody in Canada can afford those 4-bedroom McMansions right now, something else has to happen to them. So my thought would be, if they're all at 50% loan to value on average, let's say, you give them 200 grand to put a suite in, they now have a duplex. If that refis out on a one-to-one basis or a little bit higher than a one-to-one basis, they'd go up to a 56% loan to value. Mortgage payment would increase a bit, but the potential income of the property would increase substantially. What's necessary to make this happen is contractors who work with the lenders technology to deliver it at Patter as an example, who's a great property management platform actually that we had somebody mention to deliver these things. Real estate professionals who have buyers who are buying properties with the objective of duplexing them, triplexing them, and doing it within the existing structure. And I think a community, which is what a lot of people mentioned, using social media to kind of mobilize individuals to start doing these fast one-unit responses to this new Yellow Belt policy. Not to say that there's anything wrong with fourplexing everything. I have a dream one day where Forest Hill's name is changed to Fourplex Hill, but it's just not fast enough from my perspective. And so my thought is, can we do this, and can we do this fast enough? And that's kind of the only way I think we could. So that's all I have for you today. I think Chris, if I'm correct, we're going to the panel anyway. So my question for all of you is, what are we missing, like in this concept that we've created for our podcast listeners?
Perfect. Thank you, Daniel. Please, round of applause.